The Renaissance appears as the last great age, while we moderns, with our anxious care of ourselves and love of our neighbors, with all our unassuming virtues of industry, equity, and scientific method, with our lust of collection, of economy, and of mechanism, represent a weak age. Welcome back to our discussion on Nietzsche's Twilight of the Idols. Previous parts are linked in the description. Twilight of the Idols is a notoriously difficult book because of its structure. It seems as if Nietzsche hops from one subject to the next, without a clear or logical method to his madness. In this video, we will try to discover the common thread that runs throughout much of the work, so that you may hopefully read Twilight of the Idols with a fresh understanding. The great antinomy in this work is that of the weak versus the strong. If Twilight of the Idols sounds radical to our modern ears, it's because of this theme of strong versus weak. But what does Nietzsche mean when he uses those words? Twilight of the Idols is full of criticism. Criticism of the modern age, criticism of Christianity, criticism of German culture, even attacks on individual writers such as Thomas Carlyle and Ernest Renan. Throughout these attacks, we can piece together a coherent picture of what weakness entails exactly. And then, of course, we can figure out what strength means. It all starts with the world. Specifically the material world as it is given to us. Nietzsche challenges us to engage with the world as it presents itself to us. No easy task, considering the rich tradition and history of being skeptical of the world. Christians, of course, disregard the material world in favor of heaven or the kingdom of God. And Western philosophy too, broadly speaking, has not much good to say about the world either. You can watch our video How the Real World Became a Myth for a deeper dive into this topic. Nietzsche's argument is that only a person who is of a weak constitution would need to invent a philosophy or religion that makes a bad place out of the world. Similar to the parable of the fox and the grapes, where the fox cannot reach the grapes high up in the tree and then convinces himself that the grapes are probably sour and he doesn't want them anyway. Or let's take the example of the disgruntled employee who, upon being fired, yells out, "You can't fire me, I quit." The weak person comes into this world unequipped with the strength to thrive in it. And then he makes all kinds of excuses and rationalizations as to why the world is not worth living in anyway. This is where the intellect comes in. Perhaps surprisingly, for Nietzsche, the intellect is essentially a tool of the weak. The weak have more intellect. In order to acquire intellect, one must be in need of it. One loses it when one no longer needs it. He who possesses strength flings intellect to the deuce. As you perceive, intellect to me means caution, patience, craft, dissimulation, and great self-control, and everything related to mimicry. Or, as the folk wisdom goes, he who is not strong must be smart. The story of David and Goliath is an obvious example. Of course, the moral of the story is that we should look up to David. How, with cunning and intelligence, he outsmarted and defeated a much stronger opponent. Nietzsche flips the story on its head. Because David was weak, he needed to be smart. The moral of the story isn't you should try to become intelligent. The true moral of the story is you should try to be strong. A weak culture sympathizes with David. A strong culture sympathizes with Goliath. Christianity represents the ultimate rationalization and glorification of weakness in the religious domain. Schopenhauer represents the same. But in the philosophical domain, both of these forces have infected culture. They have made society sick. The sickness is degeneration. We have tricked ourselves into thinking that being sick is good and normal, and we have vilified strength because we are not strong ourselves. A recurring motif throughout Twilight of the Idols is that degeneration is a symptom and not a cause. Schopenhauer and Christianity have not made society weak. Society embraces Schopenhauer and Christianity because it has become weak, not the other way around. The reason why is simply because societies degenerate over time. The weak are always larger in number. And as this majority continues to grow, the culture starts to shift. Species do not evolve towards perfection. The weak always prevail over the strong, simply because they are the majority, and because they are also the more crafty. One characteristic of the strong is that they are noble, which is another way of saying they are small in number, they are alone. A noble gas in chemistry, for example, is a gas which does not react at all with other gases. And, of course, in old aristocratic Europe, the nobility was a small percentage of the population considered to be the elite. Even in the animal kingdom, we say species like the lonesome lion are noble animals. Nietzsche's Zarathustra is also noble. He lives alone high in the mountains and rarely comes down to speak with the common folk down below. By contrast, the weak wants to be part of the herd. The weak need the group because the strength of the weak lies in their number. Because the weak are always large in number, they must also teach moderation and the stifling of instincts. The strong have no such inhibitions because they can just take whatever they want. For example, imagine there is a table on which dinner is served in front of a group of people. The natural instinct of man is to gorge on the food and eat as much as he can handle. And the strong will do exactly that. They will take what they want and, if necessary, fight to defend their piece of the pie from the others. The weak do not have the strength to just take the food. They will instantly be defeated by the strong. Instead, what the weak do is try and make a virtue out of moderation. They will explain to the dinner guests how gluttony is a sin, how too much food is actually bad for you. In fact, fasting is good for you. They will try to convince the entire table to disregard their instinct for food. If they manage to convince the others, there will be food left for them to enjoy. Instead of one strong person hoarding all the food for himself, the strong person might be convinced that gluttony is bad and he should share his food. The weak person at this hypothetical table has used cunning and reasoning to convince the strong person to negate his instincts and to do something which is essentially bad for him, namely, give up his resources and fight his instincts. The strong person might even be shamed for his strength. He might be told, for example, to be ashamed of his appetite, that his natural advantage is unfair and that he should give it up. And maybe he even will. What we have witnessed at this hypothetical restaurant is degeneration, the triumph of the weak over the strong. And it happens all the time to every society and culture. To disregard your own natural instincts and actively search out what is good for you is the principal characteristic of degeneration. And this impulse is exactly the driving force behind Schopenhauer and Christianity. Nietzsche's entire morality, if it can be called a morality, can be summarized with this rule of thumb. If it celebrates the instincts, it is good. If it vilifies the instincts, it is bad. Above all, Nietzsche wants us to celebrate strength. I am pleased to hear that our sun is caught up in a rapid movement towards the constellation Hercules, and I hope that men on this earth will act like the sun in this respect. And with this rule in the back of your mind, you should pick up Twilight of the Idols and start reading this provocative masterpiece of philosophy. The purpose of this video and this series was to provide you with some tools to help you make better sense of the labyrinth and myriad of themes and subjects in this book. We hope we have succeeded in this quest. If you want to show some appreciation for our work, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell button and leaving a comment. If you want more Nietzsche, you can check out our in-depth series on the genealogy of morals and beyond good and evil. And as always, thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.